What's up, friends? I'm Becca Scott, and you're watching Good Time Society. And today I am talking to my friend Robert Bob McCulley. Robert was his childhood name. Don't call him that. His name is Bob.
Bob is my adult name.
Yeah.
I'm the only Bob that most people know under the age of 40. So.
Yeah. It's a great name. It's a very
name.
fun name to say.
Yes.
It is both a verb
Ooh, interesting.
and a name. Yeah.
And me.
Yeah,
That's the
and
most
a you.
important part. It's me. Yeah.
The most important part is that we're here to talk today about something that you love.
I do.
A Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game.
Yes.
Made by Cool Mini or Not, or Come On, or Simon.
Come on, or Simon. I call him Simon.
Good. Yes,
I
me
don't know
too.
if that's correct. But
I think that they have asked people to call them Come On, but it's like when you're a kid and your name is Robert, and you say, call me Bob, and people are like, whatever, Robert.
Whatever, Robert.
So my first question for you is,
Yes.
what is A Song of Ice and Fire, the miniatures game? Is
All
this
right.
only for people who are obsessed with Game of Thrones?
First of all, no. First of all, let's just say no. And secondly, so it's a miniatures game. So think of it as Warhammer meets Magic the Gathering meets chess. Do you like those three words?
I do.
Then you like those. Then you like this game.
I'm in.
So
Let's
it's
play.
set in the Game of Thrones universe, but really only like the first 4 seasons of the show.
We talking Westeros?
We're talking
across
Westeros.
the narrow sea?
We're talking like baby dragons. We're talking Dothraki. We're talking Starks, Lannisters, Targaryens, Martells, Greyjoys, Baratheon. They're all there,
Yes.
and they're all wonderful. And it's really, it's a terrific game. Very strategic, very fun. Similar to Magic, a lot of the game is won before you even sit at the table. Right? There's a whole deck building element to this deck building, but it's army building. There's a whole army building element to this of creating synergies amongst your different units, how they interact with each other. So that part is amazing and really fun, and the puzzle of that. But then there's a whole other element of on the table, the tactics of it, positioning your unit so you can charge your enemies without being charged yourself, keeping your archers behind the front lines, swinging in cavalry behind the back. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything. It's a very, very fun game.
And am I right in thinking that you are a Stark player?
I play a lot of different things. So I've been a Stark player for a long time. Great John and Eddard being my commanders of choice. Very, very strong commanders. I'm more or less starting to gravitate towards Lannisters now. Ooh. The new Gregor commander is quite strong, and the Golden Company swordsman combo with them is quite strong. What's really great about this game, so in Magic, and this is no detriment to Magic, I love Magic, but one of the things of Magic is every now and then, usually once a set, they'll print a card or a combo that's broken. Mm-hmm. And, they have teams of lawyers and people at WotC trying to stop these kinds of things from happening, but occasionally they'll happen anyways. And the player community will figure out some broken combo that, breaks the game essentially. And so at that point, Magic has 2 choices. They either let it run its course until the next few sets come out and it fades its way out of the meta, or they ban the card.
Yeah.
Right.
And now they are changing the rules of rotations to make people's cards have more value for longer if they're playing standard.
Oh, I didn't know that.
More of a reason that they gotta pulled out that band hammer, because there's always going to be card interactions that the R&D team didn't see.
So what they do with this game, which is, I think, you can sort of pick your poison here, but I like the way that I like the way that Simon does this. Because they do a season, and essentially they will fix cards. They'll hot fix stuff. If a card is over or underpowered, they'll just change the stats of the card at the start of the next season. So you don't have to go out and they don't release a new set of miniatures and say, hey, buy this set now because the old one is banned. They say, hey, the old one was a little too powerful. We're going to change its attack stat slightly to make it a little more balanced. And so as the game goes on, you don't have to keep buying new pieces. Your army will sort of get adjusted over time. And if you have a good foundation of pieces, they will balance the game sort of as the months go by. And so a piece that you bought that was underpowered 3 months later might actually, that same unit, that same piece that you have might be a little bit more valuable. So it's really cool the way they do that. And they balance it out like every 3 to 6 months.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, so give me just a broad overview of rules. How I know some miniatures games, there is a total number of points that your army can be worth, that you have to be within that points range to put all that on the table, and that's how you keep things balanced. How does it work?
Yes. So typically you play a 40-point army. In tournaments, what you do, and this is, again, I think very clever and a little different from Magic. So when you go to a tournament, you will bring two 40-point armies, and your opponent will bring two 40-point armies. So imagine sitting down at a Magic table and bringing two decks. And you get to look at your opponent's two decks before the game starts, and you get to look at theirs and they get to look at yours. But you don't know which of the two they're going to choose. So if you're a Stark player, you have to bring two Stark lists. You can't bring a Stark list and a Lannister list. So you bring two Stark lists and you say, here are my two Stark lists. And then they look and they go, well, my Gregor list would be strong against that Eddard list, but my, Tywin Lannister list would be weak against this other one. So there's a little meta happening.
How much overlap can be in the two?
As much as you want, but typically you want to pick two that are two different things.
Gotcha.
Right? And so, anyways, it's a very cool way to have a little mini game, like, ooh, that one would be strong against that, but he knows that. So then I'm going to pick that, but he knows that I know, right? And so there's that
Instead of the glass in front of you, I'm going to drink the glass in front of me.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a little bit of a Princess Bride thing happening there. So you bring two 40-point armies. You end up both selecting one, and then the game begins. And it's done in turns, and you'll see as we play. But it's done in turns and activations. But yeah, that 40-point list is sort of your deck, right? And just like in Magic, you would have control, beatdown, etc. And this is very similar. And there's lots of different things you can do with different armies. It's very cool.
Okay, I can't wait to see your Stark lists. But how did you first discover this game?
Boy, I'll just give a shout out. Zack Grafton, our friend, Zack Grafton.
You mean author and novelist Zack Grafton?
Yes, Los Angeles' author and novelist Zack Grafton. So Zack backed the game on Kickstarter. Zack was living up in Northern California at the time, and he was looking for somebody to play with. And he had the Stark and the Lannister set that he got from Kickstarter. And I had never played a miniatures game before.
Let's start by you telling me about the types of war miniature games that are out there.
All right. Well, I'll start by saying I'm no expert, right? But as far as I'm aware, there's three different kinds. So you have Warhammer, which is sort of in a class of its own, and those types of games of large individual unit armies. You have skirmish games, which are like Marvel Crisis Protocol or X-Wing, where you have individual units doing certain actions, and it's almost like a small 3 or 4 unit game versus another 3 or 4 unit game. This is called a rank and file game, where you would typically have trays of units that all move and do actions together. One of the great benefits of a rank and file game is that it's quicker. I don't have to take 45 separate activations, do 45 separate different things, 45 separate different pieces. I can have an army that has 48 units in it, but I only have 4 trays. And so each tray will move and do its own thing.
And if your fingers are made of butter, you don't knock them all over.
That's
which would
also
be my problem.
That's also true.
Yeah.
That is also true. Yeah, Butterfingers is definitely a problem. But yeah, in this game, you're able to go much more quickly and have your units do things together. And the ranks, as they decrease, will impact the power of your army. And so they think about it in a way where as your army, as that unit takes more damage, they get less powerful typically.
Now, my greatest weakness when it comes to any war miniatures game is a lot of people's favorite part, the painting.
The painting, also my weakness. In fact, the beautifully painted pieces that you will see today were not done by me. They were done by a buddy of mine named Jason. Shout out to Mr. J. Hubs. Thank you, J. Hubs, for loaning us these pieces today. We will take good care of them. But yes, of course, one of the big benefits of playing any sort of war miniatures game is the painting. If you're into the painting, the pieces for this are gorgeous. You'll see some great ones today, and it's a great part of the hobby. If you're into it, you can dive really deep.
Do you dabble, pun intended, in painting here and there?
I don't. In fact, I have a reputation now as being a player in my group that always comes. All of my pieces just come in baggies. Sword tips are broken off. Horse lances are, sort of broken off. I have a reputation. It's sort of a power move, though. You sit down at the table and you just drop all your pieces and you set them up.
It is not a power move to show up with unsleeved cards, Bob.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Jason. We'll work on him. Okay.
I know.
You do a little on your end. We'll do a little on ours.
I have a fair amount of strategic talent and almost zero artistic talent. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm not a good painter.
The Butterfingers once again gets in my way. I'm a little too impatient, I think.
And typically at tournaments, they give away prizes for best painted armies and stuff like that. So there's fun, additional things that you can win when you go to a tournament that are things like best painted, weirdest, most creative army. They do lots of stuff to keep the community really fun.
Yeah, well, I do know this about Warhammer, that there is both a sportsmanship and a painting aspect in the scoring of a tournament. Is there anything like that with the Song of Ice
No,
and Fire?
this game, they haven't done that yet. Who knows if they're going to, but for me, it's quite good because I can just show up and drop all of my pieces on the table and give everybody a bunch of anxiety.
Let them keep their lances.
Yeah.
Just put them in a nice box.
You know,
fishing tackle box,
it's now
Bob.
become my calling card, you know, in the Wet Bandits. I mean, the other thing too is that, like, when people paint the pieces, just like in Warhammer as well, like some people take the painting really seriously. They want it to be very story appropriate with the show. They want Jamie or Tywin to look how he looked in the show. And a buddy of mine just took a Bolton army to the U.S. Nationals, which unfortunately I couldn't go to because of a friend's wedding. But he built a whole Bolton army like on flying clouds with rainbows all over him, so people can just have fun with them too and just make them silly and whatever.
I'm in.
Right?
How did he do?
He did pretty well in the tournament. He's a great player. He's a really good player. His name's Carl. Shout out to Carl. Head of West Coast Bannerman.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so I got into the game. Zach was a Kickstarter backer. He was looking for someone to play with. I said, I've never played it before. We played some kitchen table games. We got all the rules wrong. Yeah. And then I started playing competitively in Northern California about last year. About a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, and I've just been addicted ever since.
What was your first event?
My first event, there are regional tournaments that happen in Sacramento every quarter. So I've been doing the Sacramento, Northern California regional tournaments. I also went to a Fresno tournament for Mid-Valley, sort of, you know, Mid-California tournament. And then I went to the Bay Area Open as well. In January, I'm going to the Las Vegas Open, and I will be training up for that over the next few months.
Ah, nice. Okay.
Cue the montage training music.
Yeah,
Cue my Rocky
I want to hear
music.
about your training regimen and what that means. But how did you do at the San Francisco Open?
So at Bay Area Open, I didn't do as well as I would have liked because there was some Targaryen players there, and almost nobody in our community plays Targs. And so dragons are a very different thing to play against. And so I got beat up by some dragons once or twice. But those
Does
are the
she
kinds...
have the Dothraki army with her?
She does. So you have Dothraki, you have Pyat Pri in the House of the Undying. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the dragons. Yeah, they're not fully grown dragons, so they're sort of still kind of babies, but they slap. They hit real hard.
Okay, I don't know the meta, but that would be what I would start out playing.
Yeah, but I got third in the tournament last week out of about 20 people. My goal at Las Vegas Open is to finish in the top 10. It should be about 60 players.
Very cool. So talk to me about your training regimen. Up and down stairs, and then small bag.
Yeah,
and
just
then...
lifting a lot of minis, rolling a lot of dice, really getting that wrist work with the dice rolls.
That part is real.
The best way to train for this game is to just play a lot of games, like Magic, right? You want to understand, you know, there are cards in this game, so you have a deck that you're playing from as well to help either improve your own armies or give disadvantage to your opponents. So having a good sense of, okay, this person's playing Greyjoys. These are the 3 cards I need to be looking out for. I need to assume that in their hand they have one of these cards that's going to really mess me up. So like just getting in those reps and learning the meta of the game and learning the things to look out for, that's the best way to train up. Is just play a lot. And guess what? You're going to have a lot of fun along the way.
Yeah,
Very
well,
little secret.
Talk to me about decks. I mean, is there casting cost? How do you build the decks?
So it's really cool. So each faction has 14 standard cards. So if you're a Lannister player, which you'll be playing today, there's 14 Lannister cards that are standard for all Lannister decks, or for all Lannister armies, I should say. So for every time that you play a Lannister, those 14 cards will be the same. Okay. But depending on which commander you take, so each army has a commander. And depending on which commander you take, you get an additional 6 cards that are unique for that commander. So Tywin has his own cards, Gregor has his own cards, Kevin Lannister, Tyrion Lannister, and so on. Joffrey. Oh, Joffrey.
Oh, man.
So,
okay, I know Tywin's probably stronger, but Tyrion
is so good.
Choice.
Oh, they're so great. So yeah, so you get all these commander cards that get mixed in, and you get 10 cards, 2 copies of each. So it's a 20-card deck. So it's a good way to supplement or complement your army to know, certain cards that are great for some armies will actually be really bad in others. So it's really fun to play around with the card synergies as well. It just adds an additional layer of strategy to the game.
Yeah, that's very exciting. All right.
One other thing, because it's Game of Thrones, and intrigue is part of the game.
Please.
Not everything takes place on the field. Ooh. So we're going to see in the game here in a few minutes that there's also something called non-combat units. And there's a whole separate board that the non-combat units play on. So this is where you have Catelyn Stark and Cersei Lannister and Tommen and Marjorie Tyrell and Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, everyone's favorite, and Peter Baelish, and all these great characters from the show are performing really cool actions off the tactics board that are helping your armies or hurting your opponents in cool ways. So again, another layer of strategy with the cards, the non-combat units, your commander, it all blends together.
Amazing. Are commanders interchangeable? Could there be something that is a commander that can also be in a rank and file army, or they are separate?
Absolutely. Most commanders, not all, but most commanders can also be used as attachments. So as an example, in Lannister, you can have a Jaime Lannister commander, or you can have a Jaime Lannister attachment. And actually, you do have a Jaime Lannister attachment today. So he can either be the commander in your army.
Is it like a gold hand attachment?
There is a gold hand Jaime, first of all. You don't have him, but there is a gold hand Jaime. He's called Valuable Captive. So you can have a gold hand Jaime, but you don't today. But yeah, so what the attachments do is, rather than impacting your whole army like a commander would, it impacts just that tray. So it will give that tray some buff or something like that. So we'll get to that later.
Yeah, okay, attachments affecting just their tray.
Just
Love
their
it.
Tray.
What is it about A Song of Ice and Fire that made you fall in love? What sets it apart?
It really is that replay value and the depth of the strategy. Again, as somebody who played a lot of Magic growing up, I've been playing Magic almost 20 years, but playing a lot of Magic growing up, so much of the game is won before the game starts. In this case, there is that element to it where you're planning out the synergies and the strategy of your army, but so much happens tactically on the board that a really good tactical player can beat somebody who's a really good list builder. And so you have to have both. And so because I played a lot of Magic growing up, I did all, I have a whole spreadsheet of all the statistics for all the dice rolling and stuff like that, right? But tactically on the board, there's always room to improve. There's always little tricks that you can learn. And so to me, there's a depth to the strategy of the game that just makes it so fun. And by the way, the community's super nice. Everybody who plays is really friendly and really welcoming, and it's just a good community to be in. So that also helps, is that everybody playing super cool and fun.
That's essential.
And now you're going to play, and you'll make it even cooler.
Stop. Okay, before we get to final thoughts, my question is, has this game, let me first say I am a huge Game of Thrones fan. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I read many of the novels and love all 7 seasons of the show. Don't acknowledge what you don't like.
Seven's great. 7 is a great number.
Has this game grown bigger than its source material?
So it has not grown outside of the Game of Thrones universe yet, but they have just announced, actually, it's just in the last week, a new skirmish game that's a little more of individual miniatures, kind of like Marvel Crisis Protocol or something like that, where individual miniatures are almost doing like a duel. So that just got announced, and I don't know much about that yet. But they are expanding the game types, but it hasn't extended beyond the Game of Thrones universe yet.
I guess I did want that answer. I also want to know if, metaphorically speaking, if you feel that it's being limited by being based on one lore.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Part of me wishes, because the game itself is so well designed and it's so thoughtful, that it was somehow separated from the Game of Thrones IP, because it, just as an example, there is a rule in the game that says if you have Robb Stark, King of the North, in your army, right? If you have Robb Stark, King of the North, in your army, and he's a non-combat unit, in this
win
case,
the moral game.
You are not allowed to have Eddard Stark in your unit, in your army, in any way, because by the time Robb Stark was King of the North, Eddard was dead. right? Spoiler alert, sorry. So there are
too
things.
Grim. It's too sad. What if they had met? What if?
I know.
I guess that's why Rob was driven to become a leader.
To become king of the North.
Because his father was murdered.
Yes. So in a way, that there's some strategic elements that are limited by the story. You can't do certain things because they don't make sense for the story. That said, it's kind of cool in a way, right? Because you're like, oh, it's really neat that when you play Rickon, for example, in an army, that Osha comes with him, the wildling woman, right? There's all these kind of, or that when you have Ramsay Bolton in an army, he gets Reek as his own special attachment, right? So there's these cool, so in some ways the game is limited by the lore, but in other ways there's these kind of cool moments that come out and you're like, oh yeah, that is cool that it works that way, because that is how the story works. So you get it on both sides.
Well, I am so excited to learn to play later today because I'm really excited to relive the lore because for years I ate, slept, and breathed
Didn't we all?
Game of Thrones. Yeah, I mean, I've never had so loyal and consistent a watch party for anything for multiple seasons as I have for that. I
mean, I remember specifically the moment, the Red Wedding moment, right? And I am standing up on my couch and I am gripping like, oh my God, I'm out of my seat, what a time, right? It was wonderful.
That was actually, I was late to the game because, no pun intended, because I saw people's visceral reactions on their keyboards on Facebook, which I'm not even on anymore. Yeah. This is how long ago this was. Yeah. That reacting to the Red Wedding. Yeah, me and Tom on MySpace were like, why are people so concerned? And that is why I started watching. And in between the seasons, there was a season lull, and I read the first 5 books because I was like, I need to know what happens next. Yeah. And so I'm really excited to dig into this lore with you today.
One final thought, just for anyone watching who's never played a rank and file game, or if you like Game of Thrones or don't, what I'll say is this. If you don't like Game of Thrones, you've never heard of it, you're not interested in it, this is still a great game. Just from a strategy and design perspective, the miniatures are beautiful. The way that the strategy plays out, it's a really, really clever game. So whether you're a Game of Thrones fan or not, I really recommend giving it a try.
Awesome. Bob, it has been such a delight to talk to you about something you love.
Thank you so much. I love talking about it.
Yeah, thank you for clearing your whole day to do this. Stop. It was such a joy. And I look forward to playing with you.
Yeah, I look forward to you beating me.
Let's play!
Let's play!
All right, I am very excited to get my first play underway of A Song in Ice and Fire. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you around. Bye-bye.
Oh yeah, in the game you can make Jaime and Cersei. I forgot to tell you.
Oh, fun! What is the power-up?
That's a really come back. Ask me if they can because I want to answer that.
Is this game?
Like with Jaime and Cersei, this game.